This is Eduardo Suarez. In my previous video, I showed you how to create a second motion group, and we use it to actuate a servo gripper that we added in the user tool 2. In this video, we're going to use a servo gripper and we're going to create a Palletizer program. We're going to review what I have in this work cell. We have the user tool 1, that is a vacuum gripper, and we have the user tool 2, that is a servo gripper. If we expand the user tool 2 and we go to the link, we can go to the properties, and you're going to see here that I have in the motion group, I have defined the group as a group 2 and the join as a join 1, and we can open and close the gripper with a slider. If we select now the user tool 2, we can go to properties and we can go to general, and you're going to see here that I changed the orientation of the gripper to match the orientation of the boxes that we're going to pick up from the infill conveyor. Also, you can see here that if I go to the user tool tab, I've defined the user tool for the triad to be in the center of the fixed part of the gripper. We can see now the fixtures that I have. I have an infill conveyor for the boxes, and I have two outfit conveyors for the Palletizer. Pallet outfit conveyor 1, where we're going to be placing the boxes, and I have a pallet outfit conveyor 2. You're also going to see that I have defined a user frame that is attached to the pallet outfit conveyor 1. If you go to user frame, we have in here the user frame that it has this orientation on the X, Y, and Z axis. And this is the only user frame that I have. Everything else is taught in the word frame. Now, when I create a Palletizer program, and the general idea of the Palletizer is that we're going to have an arrangement of boxes that we're going to call it pattern, and we define a position for the first box, and we place any other boxes following an offset on the X, Y, and Z from the original position. I have created the parts. Here I have the box 1. If we go to properties, you're going to see in the dimensions of the box. And if we go to the infill conveyor, if we go to parts, you're going to see here that I have the orientation of the box on the X, Y, and Z. If we go to the gripper, the gripper number 2, also have the pattern here, and you're going to see that the orientation on the gripper matches the orientation that we have on the box infill conveyor. So now we can move the gripper to the box infill conveyor, and we can go to pick it up. So on the pallet outfit conveyor 1, I have my parts in here, and you're going to see that the position of the first box matches the orientation that they have for the user frame, and we also can move the robot to that position. That's going to be, we need to select the gripper 2, and we're going to have in here the position where we're going to locate the first box. So as I mentioned before, the idea of the palletizer is that we're going to define an initial position for the first box, and then we're going to just offset any other boxes following this position. And that is what I'm doing here, because I have created an arrangement of boxes. And if we go here, you're going to see that I have defined 5 boxes on the X direction. I have 3 boxes on the Y direction, but I'm showing only 2 for now. We're going to see the third arrangement later. And on the Z direction, I have only 1 layer. And this is the offset that I'm placing each one of the boxes. And in this case, I just added 1 millimeter to each one of the offsets just to be able to see the boxes on the palette. We're going to make one more assumption here. We're going to assume that the boxes on the infeed conveyor are always qualified in the same position for the picking, and when we move the gripper to the infeed conveyor, we're going to assume that the gripper is always picking the boxes from the center on the Y orientation of the box. Now we are going to create a Palletizer program. We're going to review here what I have in the position registers, and in the registers I have defined a position register 1 that is going to be my home position. We have to make sure that when we go to coordinates we have user 0, user frame 0. So now I can just move to position. I have defined the position register 2. That's going to be the first place position. That is going to be the position for the first box on the palette. And you have to be careful with this position register 2, because this is going to be defined on the user frame number 1. That's different for the word user frame that we have for position register 1. Then I have a position register 5 that is just going to be an offset on the Z direction. If you go to position, you're going to see that the only value that I have in here different from 0 is going to be on the Z axis. And I have a position register 6 that is going to be an offset on the X, Y, and Z direction. And that is going to take account for the offset that we're going to be adding for any additional boxes that we're going to be putting on the palette. If we go to the registers, I'm going to have register 1, 2, and 3. That is going to be the index for the row, the column, and the layer. This index is going to be the index that is going to be on the for loop that we're going to be using for the simulation purposes when we run the program. And then we have register number 4, 5, and 6. That is going to be the number of boxes that we're going to be placing on the X direction, on the Y direction, and on the Z direction. That's going to be the number of layers. In this case, we are going to do the simulation only with 1 layer. We're going to have 2 columns. That's going to be the 2 arrangement that we're going to have on the Y direction. And we're going to define the rows. That is going to be the number of boxes that we're going to be placed on the X direction on the user frame tool. We're going to look at the programs that are having here. We're going to go to select, and first we're going to start with the close gripper. So if we go to the details for the close gripper, this group mask is going to be only group number 2, because we know already that the gripper is assigned to the motion group 2. So we don't need to do any actions. We are not going to have any movement on the group number 1 that corresponds to the axis for the robot. We're going to select, and this time we can look at the open gripper. Gripper, if you go to details, it's going to be exactly the same. The group mask is going to be only on the group number 2. And this is the only 2 programs that we have on the group 2. Everything else is going to be on the group 1. So we're going to have now a main program. If we go to details, main program is only on the group 1, because it's going to be taking care of just moving the axis for the robot. We're going to review quickly what we're having here. First, I'm going to set the user frame. Then we're going to set the user tool, the payload, and the override. Then we're going to call the home position. In the home position, the only thing I'm doing is just moving to the position register number 1. And then I'm calling the open gripper. If we open the program for the open gripper, I'm defining the user frame number 0, the user tool number 2, and I'm going to go to the position number 1. If we look at the position, we are defining the position on the group number 2, on the user tool number 2, and it's going to be a movement on the joint number 1 of 200 millimeters. Then we're going to call the initialize. Inside the initialize, what I'm doing is putting the position register number 6 to 0. Just remember that the position register number 6 is going to be the offset on the X, Y, and Z direction for the location of the boxes on the pallet. And then I'm going to put the register number 1, 2, and 3 into 0. That is going to be the index for the for loop on the layer, the column, and the row. Next, I'm going to start calling the for loops. And this is the first for loop that we're going to have is going to be for the number of layers. So we're going to start from 1, and we're going to go to up to register number 6. In our case, the register number 6 is going to be only 1 layer for this simulation. Then we're going to have another inner for loop that is going to be counting for the number of columns, and we're going to go from column 1 to register number 5. That's going to be 2 columns. Finally, we have another inner for loop that is going to be for the number of rows, and we're going to go from row number 1 to register number 4. That is going to be 5 boxes on the X orientation, on the X direction on the user frame. Then we're going to call the pick case. In this case, it's going to pick the case with the gripper. We're going to see in a moment what we have inside. when we can map from the pick case, we're going to set up again the user frame to number 0, the user tool to number 2, the payload and the override. And then we're position, that is going to be position number 1, is the position that we have in here on top of the palette. And we're going to call the place case. We're going to see again in a moment what we have inside the place case program. And when we finish that, we set up again the user frame to number 0, the user tool, the payload, and the override. And we're going to move to the bounce position again. And from here, we're going to increase the offset on the X direction for the position register number 6. So if we place, if we place the first box in here, what we're going to do, we're going to increment the offset for this place position in the same amount that we have for the width of the box. That is going to be 240 millimeters plus 1 millimeter that I added for visibility of the boxes in here. Then we're going to call home, and we're going to go back to home, and we're going to end the inner for loop for the X direction. So it's going to be looping in here until we complete the 5 boxes. Then we're going to put the position register 6 in the X back to 0. We're going to go to this position, and we're going to 6 on the Y direction in the 386 millimeters. That is going to be the length of the box. So we're moving from column number 1 to column number 2, and we're going to start the same process again with the inner for loop for the row. So the process is very simple. When we finish this for loop for the layer, we're going to put the position register again on the Y direction to 0. So we're initializing this one back to 0, and we're going to do the next for loop that's going to be for the number of layers. And we're not doing anything because the number of layers is 1. And with this, we put everything back to 0, and we start again from the beginning. So what we can do now, we can review what we have inside the pick and the place. The pick case, and inside the pick case, what we are defining the user frame as a number 0, the user tool as a number 2, and we're going to move to the pick position. That is going to be this position over here. We're going to move to the pick position. That's going to be position number 2. We're going to call the simulation program for picking the case. We're going to call the close gripper, and we're going to wait 100 milliseconds, and then we're moving back to the pick position. That's going to be position number 1. You can see here, this program is very simple. Now we're going to move to the place case program. The place case program, now we need to define the user frame as number 1. Just remember that we're going to be placing on this user frame that is for the palette outfit conveyor number 1. Again, the user tool is going to be always number 2. We're not changing that. We're going to move to the position register 2, with an offset tool that's given by position register number 5, that, if you remember that, it was only 100 millimeters on the z-axis. And then we're going to go to the place position. We're going to call the open gripper. We're going to wait 100 milliseconds, and then we're going to play simulation program. We wait again 100 milliseconds, and we're going to move back to the position register 2, again with an offset tool defined by position register number 5, and we have the offset that we have already defined for the position register number 6. We're going to review the big case simulation program and the play simulation program. We're going to select the bit case simulation. See here that I'm picking the box 1 from the boxing feed conveyor with the servo gripper. Clearly, if we open the place case simulation program, it's gonna, instead of pick, we're gonna drop the box 1 from the gripper on the user tool 2 on the pallet of feed conveyor on the box number 1 on the index that is gonna be an asterisk number. So now we're gonna go back to the teach pendant. We're gonna select the in program, and we're gonna give it a try. We're gonna go to simulation, and we're gonna start the simulation. and ran as expected. We placed the first box on, and then we just keep adding offsets on the X and Y directions. However, things start getting more complicated when we start changing the pattern. We're going to go back to the palette of the conveyor 1, and this time we're going to enable the box in this position, and we're going to enable the box in this position and this one in here. So what are we adding? What are we doing this time? We add in one more column, but in this case we have changed the orientation of the boxes, and instead of having 5 boxes in the X direction, we're going to have only 3 boxes on the Y direction. So we're changing the orientation of the boxes, we're changing the orientation of the gripper, and now instead of just moving the offset on the X direction by the width, we are moving the offset by the length, and also we need to add a small offset to compensate the difference in distance that we have between what we had before with the width offset and the length offset. So you can see that creating this pattern is going to be more complicated than the pattern that we had before, with just the offset that we created with the for loop. Now we're going to add another level of complexity, and this time we're going to add another layer that's going to be in the opposite direction. If we go back to the palette of the conveyor 1, you're going to see here that I added another array of boxes that is in the opposite direction that we had before. So you can see that this Palletizer program is not going to be able to handle that in an easy way. So we're going to pause in here, and in the second part of the video, we're going to look for a way to fix this with another Palletizer program.